CISO series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Well, cassia. This time last week, it wasn't the name on everybody's lips, and then it ruined a lot of people's weekends, and then it ruined a lot of people's weeks. So we want some context on how it's going, why it happened, and what should we do next with regards to cassia and other types of situations like this. The Department of Homeland Security is hiring a lot of cybersecurity people. And could technological diversity help to keep systems more secure than they are right now? Well, these are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been following and delivering to you every day on the Cybersecurity Headlines podcast daily. And now we're going to get a chance for some insight, some opinion, and some expertise on these and more from our guest, who this week is Sean Bowen, coming back to work with us again, VP of Information Security at World Fuel Services.
Thanks for having me.
Sean, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm looking forward to your opinions on all of these things that we're having to deal with right now. And we've got, as usual, a very busy 20 minutes. Now, our sponsor for our show today is Viaku, and I'll be talking about them a little bit later on. And if you are joining us this evening right now, be sure to join us on Crowdcast so that you can send your own comments and we can have a look at those as we go through our evening or our time together today. So the first thing, of course, has to be the cassia attack. This was apparently the first time that this kind of attack used a zero-day exploit. And of course, it was an infection against managed service providers and has rippled out further and further to their customers and their customers. It was also, of course, a holiday attack, 4th of July weekend. So a lot of significant developments from the bad guys here in terms of using these technologies even more specifically and carefully than before. So, Sean, I haven't got a specific question for you other than what are your thoughts? What's your observations about what you've seen and heard?
Yeah, I remember when SolarWinds first happened, several of us were talking about this being a new mark in cybersecurity history, about our supply chain being compromised, which is not something we'd really had to deal with from a technology standpoint. And I don't remember which CISO it was, but we were kind of chatting about it. He says, this is only the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And we said that we kind of joked that SolarWinds would be forgotten in 2 years. Well, we're only 6 months away from that, or 7 months away from SolarWinds, and we're already more or less forgetting about it, and not necessarily completely yet. But this is something that we've been talking about for several years. We've preached the zero trust. We've preached lots of different security mindsets to not trust individual systems, yet we have to rely on them being able to communicate and connect into our environments. And that's exactly what happened here, where a lot of MSSPs use this software to provide services and have connections into an environment, which is typically your trusted entity, and now they're being compromised. And so I won't be surprised if by the end of this year we have another big one in the supply chain piece similar to this. I believe I read somewhere, though, and correct, anybody don't jump on me if I'm wrong on this, but I thought I read somewhere earlier today that this software was, or the malware was actually written in a way to avoid any Russian systems, which I thought was a really interesting attack on this one. So it wasn't specifically exploiting, it was very targeted in the sense of what they're doing. And I don't know what the truth in that is. It's probably early reporting. And so that's where it's at.
It wouldn't be the first time if that happened. That's going back to Stuxnet and things like that.
Yeah.
There's always this kind of thing, which again, I think I have heard a story that says if you do want to protect your systems, you should format something in Russian. You can actually use that in reverse to try and become one of the protected species.
Set it as the default language. That's a good idea.
Absolutely. Totally right. Yeah. So yeah, this is a cat and mouse game. It is also growing exponentially. And of course, the bad guys know about, who is willing to pay ransoms, how much their insurance companies are willing to do that. So being a cat and mouse, we've got to look at what are we doing on this side. And one of the stories from this week was that the Department of Homeland Security is announcing a multifaceted hiring spree. This is Alejandro Mayorkas on Friday announced this. It's the largest hiring initiative ever, onboarding 300 cybersecurity professionals and the extension of 500 tentative job offers. But what I like also about this is a focus on K to 12 on cybersecurity initiatives for girls in grades 6 to 12. So they're looking to get the next generation of experts ready and in tune. So this sounds like a good news story. Do you think so, or do you think that this is something that the government should be taking the lead on as it is doing right now?
So several things to unpack here. My previous life, I was a split personality. I was a reservist in the military doing cyber warfare, and I was also a CISO and a senior cybersecurity exec as a civilian. And on the civilian side, it was very difficult to hire into the government piece for various reasons. And so to see something like this is phenomenal. Putting on my other hat, doing cyber operations, or in this case, defense type situations, there's a lot of people, and I think this is true in the cybersecurity industry as a whole, but there are a lot of people that sign up to do cybersecurity because of the job and not 100% paycheck. Yeah, we all like money. No one's going to say no to it, but there's a lot of fun involved in certain organizations that you just don't get in other organizations. And DHS is one of those organizations where you're going to get to see things that you will not see anywhere else in the corporate America or corporate world in general. And so this is a good news story, in my opinion. I also, the second part of that conversation is the K to 12 stuff. That is something that we need to push very hard. STEM at a young age, male, female, all the different communities in the U.S. Not just the private tech schools, but general. Even if you're going to go into accounting or marketing, the idea of understanding low code or no code automation and some data analytics skills, like these are key skills that we need to do. I mean, I put it up there with balancing checkbook and filing your own taxes. This is something that we need to teach kids early on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the root of everything that we're doing is now prone to damage because of these attacks and right down to the infrastructure. So totally agree with you there. And it allows us to just segue to the next story here, which is actually coming from an opinion piece from Robert M. Lee, who's the CEO and founder of the security company Dragos. And he wrote in a blog this week, actually, no, it was a little bit further back, but it's making news again right now. Because of what we're seeing, would it be possible if there was less focus on homogeneous systems? The actual systems that everyone is buying from these suppliers means that much like in the sort of the world of disease and virology, we've got a lot of people or a lot of systems in this case that are universal in their structure. And is this part of the problem? Do you think, as an expert in this area, that maybe having some variety might help, or would that simply complicate things further?
Yeah, this one's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Chaos or diversity, if you have it under control, but in reality, it's chaos. Chaos is an enemy's worst nightmare, and it's also their best situation because we likely don't have it mapped out. The reason why CIS, well, now it's top 18 in their version 8, or NIST, CSF, identity and knowing your environment, inventory it is number one, and number two, because we have so many discrete systems and we don't know where everything is. And the more variety and diversity you put out there, the more systems you have to manage, and then and we just talked about not having people that are educated. Now you have to have someone that needs to know system A and system B and system C, because we really are not going to be able to hire 3 different people to do that.
Right.
But at the same time, if every company uses the same software, i.e. SolarWinds or Kaseya, we're going to have these situations. And so it's got to be the right hybrid that's necessary for your environment, and understanding that. So you're really not going to be able to solve it. And let's face it, no one goes 100% with one system.
Right.
So there's still some diversity there already.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I just want to also acknowledge Jesse Whaley, who's just texted in here that this will be the cassia attack was the first of many attacks that we'll see leveraging managed service providers to scale attacks, and that's very, very likely the case. I mean, they're just simply finding the weak points wherever they happen to be, and this is again the last 2 years it seems it's just been rocketing right up. So just to move on to something a little bit smaller. One of my favorite applications, Audacity, an open source sound editing tool, was bought recently, and there are rumors that it is now sort of like maybe kind of a Russian spy tool because the agreement to use it involves a whole bunch of things that say, well, they can collect IP addresses, OS versions, and unspecified data for, quote, legal enforcement for potential buyers in the future, and also watching out for DDoS attacks. I'm not quite sure how that got in there, but a lot of people in this community are rather concerned about using this open source application, which, despite being free, is very, very versatile. Do you think this is legitimate fear? Is it being overblown? Is it the same kind of thing as you would click off when you say yes to anything else you sign up for? Or should we be watching this carefully?
Well, the phrase that's been going around for a few years now is if you're not paying for it, then you're the product. And so whether this is a Russian mole or anything else, you gotta understand what you're joining into. And so yeah, it's I don't know if it's necessarily you're concerned about nation state peace, because if we look at the trends, what's the value of going after a bunch of individual home system users? The reality is there's probably a few corporate people using this type of stuff, and so
Yeah.
you got to try to balance that out accordingly. So it's we can live in fear for a lot of things. I've used Audacity before. I don't currently have it on any of my systems, but not because of this. It's just one of those things. I think there's a right way to do things with installing software and properly, protecting your environment and where you have this, relative to sensitive data. If you're using Audacity to record a marketing, you know, recording of some sort, don't install that with your financial data. It's
Yeah,
just
very
standard
agreed.
types of things. So I think there's ways to take things that are not necessarily the safest. Right? They say, the zero trust model, right? Again, it's don't trust it or isolate it appropriately. This is one of those things like manage your risk and
Right.
try not to blend that. So
Excellent. Excellent. Our sponsor for this week is Viaku. So here's a tip. Knowing what IoT devices are running out-of-date firmware doesn't shrink your attack surface. Remediating IoT vulnerabilities by using Viaku to automate firmware patches does. So check out viaku.com, that's viakoo.com, and learn more about making your IoT devices secure with automated cyber hygiene. Once again, that's viakoo.com. Cyber reinsurance. This is, of course, the basis of insuring organizations, and we alluded to this a little bit earlier. The insurers of the insurers are now saying that they saw a 40% jump in renewal rates as companies were looking for help in the recovery process from all of these ransomware attacks. And as we have seen, the ransomware bad guys are actually checking out to see how much the insurers will be willing to fork out. AXA in France backed away from ransomware, and France itself as a country is looking to sort of clamp down on this. And premiums are going up. And providers are realizing this exposure now is costing money. So I'm curious to know, Sean, is this now perhaps the best incentive? I mean, we have been crying out from the rooftops about the need to protect against this, but now money is at stake in terms of who pays for this. So is this perhaps a greater incentive to organizations to be more proactive in their cybersecurity management?
On the surface, I want to say yes. I think there's a much deeper equation that you got to math out to get to your final answer. But on the surface, I say yes because it's definitely, just think of regular insurance, right? It's safer to wear all your protective gear when you go skateboarding than it is to pay for the medical bills of an incident afterwards, right? Or whatever your hobby might be. But the reality is there's going to be a breach. We're not going to be able to spend the we're not going to be able to close out all security incidents. There's too many issues that we have to kind of defend against, whether it's people and things like that. So you're gonna get breached at some point somehow. Now you greatly reduce that risk, and what I would love to see from an insurance piece, I know they ask a standard questionnaire for how are you defended and security. I'd love for them to see like an audit, kind of like a health check, just like we talk about cyber hygiene, we talk about all these things. Your insurance, we obviously give insurance based off of your age and your gender and a variety of different things. I think a basic hygiene check, whether you have a SOC 2, and with their own independent audit it, and validate some of those things, and even combine them. It's one of those things where I think Tesla, if you look at Tesla and their car insurance analogy, where they want to offer car insurance, well, their car insurance is going to be based off of the feeds your car gives back to them. So how many times you had last minute brake warnings, how many times you got put into autopilot jail where you weren't paying attention 3 times. There's all these things, but they're pulling in factors, and each month your rate can change based off of your driving habits. And if we can get to that kind of insurance thing, then I think we can really start to incentivize the security piece of, hey, if we install this tool, we stop paying that 50% surplus in insurance. I think that's where I'd love to see us go.
So dynamic insurance and perhaps even pre-existing conditions for corporates. So just I want to acknowledge we've got Jesse again saying cyber insurance is hot right now as a market, anywhere from 50 to 400% rate hikes. And also want to acknowledge Richard Rushing, who is saying that we've seen, going back to our open source Audacity story, an uptick in open source issues from changes to code being installed. So there is an uptick. A lot of people are turning to open source, of course. So yeah, there's going to be an uptick in problems as well. So it's the kind of progress that people need to make, and I just think that bringing the insurers in with the money that they control may be a very interesting new change. But I want to switch over to something a little lighter for a moment, a little bit good. While Mark Zuckerberg was floating around a lake on his hoverboard on the weekend, Facebook itself is doing some great stuff in Africa, working with a company down there called Liquid Intelligent Technologies to wire up the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then this is it's going to make Facebook one of the biggest investors in fiber networks in the region. And not only is it bringing high-speed internet to a lot of people who don't have it, but it's also employing about 5,000 people. I've always been a fan of seeing these the places that have less than adequate internet access getting a little bit more access to the playing field here. Do you think this is a good thing once again, or do you think that with your cybersecurity specialist eye that this could be once again a haven for cybercrime, or both at the same time?
Yeah, I think if you start getting a flux of emails from a Congo prince looking for $5 million, then yeah, I think we definitely have an issue. It's difficult because we live in a capitalist economy, and a company like Facebook's not just donating the money to get this wired up just for tax write-offs. So there's some agenda behind it to some level. But on just the charitable side of stuff, yes, I'm 100%. I want people connected. The value of the internet has brought information to people's fingertips that we've never had, even just decades ago. It's still, there's a positive and negative to having the internet, right? You have an unlimited access to information. You also have unlimited access to information. So it's what you do with it, right? Fire's good when you're cooking. Fire's bad when it's your house. Yes. So there's some positives to bringing it, but we also have to understand what we're doing to those environments. However, the fact that we are so advanced before we bring it in, I think we can start to do things right. There's a lot of lessons learned and things like that are positive.
It's going to give a lot of countries the opportunity to leapfrog over sort of the industrial revolutions of
Yeah,
2, 3, and 4 to get right into 5G and internet and hit the
absolutely.
ground running. Just wanted to pause for a second also to acknowledge and say thank you to the people who've commented on the show here, and just say that Jesse Welly is the CISO at Amtrak and Richard Rushing is the CISO at Motorola Mobility. I think it's important to acknowledge that. We have time for one last question here, and this is the Pentagon related question. Once again, we are moving forward, or they are moving forward. They have canceled a $10 billion Jedi cloud contract that Amazon and Microsoft were fighting over, saying that basically it's no longer relevant, doesn't meet their needs anymore. But they have now opened up a new one, which is called the Joint Warfighter Cloud Capability, and is intending to solicit its proposals from Amazon and Microsoft, but are also suggesting that there may be others that they're going to look at if those can also meet the requirements. I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, time's moving by, but are you worried about the kind of the waste that happens when these kinds of things are brought up and then just killed the way they are?
Yeah, so sitting front row in on that side of acquisitions, the government acquisition is broken. There's been a lot of really good people there trying to fix it and innovate and get some acceleration in the acquisition. We always joked that every contract was going to get protested, no matter who you awarded it to. It's going to be protested by the other person or the other people, um, and uh, and so you always had to bake in multiple years, and it was one of the pains of dealing with the government acquisition process. And this was no different. Obviously, one of the biggest, particularly the biggest in IT, but one of the bigger contracts that the DoD has issued out. This is not going to change. We're going to have another protest of some sort. I do think that a hybrid of the two, and I mean, this is a personal opinion. I think that there's a benefit to Azure, and I think there's a benefit to AWS, and I think that they complement each other very well, honestly, if you deploy that in that sense. Um, and then we also talk about the diversity of our tech suite, right? Back to an earlier conversation, earlier story, and so I think that there's some benefit to this. I do think Jedi was a much cooler named contract, but we don't select by names of contracts.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that you can't go wrong with that. But you're quite right. It's bringing the two giants back to the table again for a joint warfighter cloud. It's a pretty cool name unto itself as well. So, boy, we have gone through these so quickly. Or at least the time has gone by so quickly, and I'm so grateful for your expertise in these. Was any of these stories a favorite to you? Either again a sort of a thumbs up good news story that you liked, or an eye roller saying here we are again. Any of these that stood out for you?
The DHS is bifurcated again. I'm super thumbs up on the K to 12 piece, and I don't know what the jealous equivalent would be for hiring 300 people, but I'm jealous of DHS being able to hire 300 people. I'm sure a lot of the CISOs out there would love to be able to get that kind of hiring, or even 1% of that. So I think that's definitely the story to go to. And that K to 12 stuff, I think that's something we, as CISOs and in general as cybersecurity experts, we need to do a lot more of that kind of going into the schools and sharing what we have, and even with our children or our family members, share our passion for technology and STEM in general, not just security.
Absolutely. And just going back to what Jesse Welly is saying here with regards to the Amazon and
Yeah.
Microsoft fighting over the thing, there'll always be a protest if there's just one winner. So onwards and upwards, as we say. So, boy, Sean, it's been such a pleasure working with you. And I want to say thank you very much for being here today. And it's great to see you again. Great to work with
Thank
you
you.
again. So thank you so much. And wow, hope to see you again soon. In an episode coming up in the future.
Good deal. Thanks. I love being on here.
Great. Cheers. Thank you. So we have another show basically in the bag here, and I wanted to thank Sean Bowen once again, VP of Information Security at World Fuel Services, and I also want to thank our sponsor, Viaku, for this week. We have always a great time putting these shows together. And doesn't stop here. Come back tomorrow because we will have our Friday video chat. It's back. So it's Friday, July the 9th, Hacking Secure Cloud Mitigation. It's an hour of critical thinking on how to keep pace with the business's desire to move to the cloud. That's always a hot and controversial topic. So check it out. And in the meantime, remember that the Cybersecurity Headlines podcast does come to you every weekday. It's about 6 or 7 minutes of the news you need to know to get your week started. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Stay safe. I'll see you then.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.